Morning everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Jentry O'Daniel. I am a ER physician assistant. I've been doing that for 3 or 4 years now. I also have my bachelor's degree in human nutrition. Recently, my husband and I have really developed an interest and passion for helping people better understand nutrition, the importance of exercise, the importance of disease prevention and longevity. And as part of our mission with that, I've started these Coffee with Gentrys to talk general nutrition to people, kind of sift through the research that's out there and help you understand your nutrition, your goals, and help you get there a little bit easier. So I've had so many requests to talk about intermittent fasting, and it's common now. We're seeing a lot of people talk about it. There's a lot of buzz about it. There's so many ways to do it, but the research is kind of scarce. It shows different things, and so trying to find exactly the benefits, exactly how it can incorporate into your life, and what you may expect to experience during that time is what I want to talk to you about today. Good morning, everybody. So, intermittent fasting, it's been around since humans have been around. A lot of times it's incorporated with religious beliefs, personal beliefs, dietary precautions, and restrictions. So just as a general summary, I want to talk about the different ways we can talk about intermittent fasting. And traditionally, it's a fasting period of any 1 day to up to 7 days. That's your typical fast. Commonly now is like a 5-2 fast, meaning that 5 days a week you have your normal diet, and then 2 days a week you have a fasting day. There's even alternate day fasting where you fast 1 day, eat a regular diet, another day fast. And then there's extensive periods where people are fasting for 48 hours or anything like that. What we're calling intermittent fasting recently, and I think kind of poorly using the term, is more like time-restricted feeding. And time-restricted feeding would be a daily time period where you restrict all your calorie consumption in these 6 to 12 hours. And you're fasting the rest of that time. So we're calling that intermittent fasting, but the scientific term for that is actually calorie-restricted feeding, or I'm sorry, time-restricted feeding. So what has started, I think, the research on this is that generally on the medical field, if someone was wanting to lose X amount of weight, what we would recommend, especially if they're in that 5-10% body weight, we would recommend to people to calorie restrict every single day 400 to 600 calories. That was our general recommendation to the public. And what that does is, so I don't know if you guys know this, but 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories. So if you want to lose 1 pound of fat, and if we want to lose weight, we want to lose fat, you have to restrict 3,500 calories to do that. So a healthy weight loss goal would be to lose 1 pound per week. So that would be 3,500 calories per week, which would be 500 calories a day. So that's where we're getting those numbers. And people can do that, especially if they incorporate exercise into their diets or into their lifestyle. But what we found is, as soon as people reached that goal, or even before they reached their weight loss goal, they'd rebound. Okay, they would regain weight, and often faster than it took them to lose that weight. So we're doing all this research trying to understand why. Why is the regain so prominent and so rapid? And what we're finding is something we talked about a little bit when we were talking about that yo-yo diet a couple weeks ago, is that we're rebounding, we believe, because we are decreasing our metabolic rate during that calorie restricted time. And some studies are actually saying it can be anywhere from 30 to 40%. Our metabolic rate is falling, and it can take 2 to 4 years for our metabolism to ramp back up, especially as we age and if we're female, which is a bummer. So we're thinking maybe this isn't the best model to teach people, to help people to lose weight, because if in the long run we're not helping them, and in the long run we're really just decreasing their metabolic rate, are we serving these people at all? And my answer would be no. And I'll tell you, that was my recommendation to patients, and that's what I was learning through school a lot too. And it's maybe not serving people like we thought that it would. So now we're coming up with these different methods to help people lose weight. We're studying and learning about it to see, is this more effective than the typical caloric restriction that we recommended? And one of these methods is intermittent fasting. And what we're finding with intermittent fasting is that if you fast for these periods of time, whether it's 12 to 16 hours a day, or if it's 1 day a week or 2 days a week, what we're finding is that you get that caloric restriction, that 3,500 calories less during your week without changing your metabolic rate, which is huge. It's a short enough amount of time that your metabolism's not changing, but you're getting fewer calories during that time. So in my opinion, that's the best argument and model for intermittent fasting, is because you're just not consuming as many calories, or it's easier, and your metabolism is staying the same. Good morning, Macy. How are you doing today? So I think that's huge. Another model is saying, there was a study done called the Lean Gain study, and they took two populations of people and they ate the exact same foods, the exact same amount of calories, and they compared the people that ate those calories throughout a typical 12 to 16 hour day, and then they compared it to people who ate those calories between 1 p.m. and 9 p.m. at nighttime. And the intermittent fasting, or the calorie restricted time, those people actually lost more fat than the other population. And even in a short time, we're not talking about metabolic changes throughout the future, just in that short amount of time. So that has us intrigued a little bit, saying what else could be going on? What else could be going on that we're actually burning more fat during that restricted time? And these are all theories. First and foremost, I'll tell you this. Most of the studies I was able to find was in animal studies. And then there are some human studies, but I'll be honest, they're pretty flawed. Good morning, Case. How are you, sweetie? But this is the information that we have to gain. And what we're thinking is that during this time, there's cellular and hormonal changes that are resting when you're not feeding, and then rebooted when you feed. And this rest and reboot cycle that you're putting yourself in when you do a time-restricted feeding can actually be more beneficial. So, other benefits of intermittent fasting besides weight loss, and this is what really, really excites me and intrigues me, is that we relearn our hunger cues. So a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this as well, especially in the evenings, my stomach will growl or I'll get a craving and I'm like, am I hungry or am I just snacky? Am I hungry or am I snacky? Do I need to eat? Or is it an emotional eating kind of thing? So when you do these periodic fastings, even if it's a time-restricted feeding that's daily, you get better in tune with those hunger cues and get to know the difference between hunger and snackiness. And I think that is huge, learning how to listen to those body cues. Another thing is you learn and you teach your body how to tough through hunger. And that's important. We do not need to eat every hour or every 2 hours. We don't always have to be snacking on things. You know, we are so blessed to be Americans and live in this country and have the financial blessings that we have to be able to have an abundance of food. Whether that food's quality or not is a different conversation, but we have an abundance of food here. And a lot of times that we feel like we have to eat and feed ourselves all the time. With intermittent fasting, you're teaching yourself, one, to listen to those hunger cues, but then also to learn how to push through hunger, which is important sometimes. Sometimes we have to reteach our bodies exactly what hunger is. Another thing that I think is so huge is that it allows us to rest our gut. So think about the process. Think about how amazing our body is processing food. Okay, so you take a hamburger or a salad or this huge steak or whatever it is. You take that and it's in a plate in front of you. And our bodies, through our digestive tracts, breaks that down to cellular components that's absorbed into microscopic cells that's broken down and used for energy, for fat storage, for protection, to create proteins. I mean, it's amazing how it can take a multi-substance, huge piece of food and break it down to cellular components. And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of processes. So when you can rest those systems for X amount of time, 12 hours, 2 days, whatever it is, if you can rest those systems can rebuild themselves. They can detoxify themselves. They can relearn their processes, clean out the junk. There's a cellular process called autophagy And it's super, super important, but it can only happen at a time of rest. And autophagy is when the cells reprogram themselves, clean out the junk, recycle the good, and regenerate in a lot of ways. And that process is huge. It's important for anti-inflammation. It's important for disease prevention, like cardiovascular disease, cancer risk, things like that. And if we're not getting the sleep we need, and if we're not giving our bodies rest, even digestive rest, we're not as good at that process. So I think that's huge. Another really interesting thing about intermittent fasting is that it boosts the immune system. So I think it's really important, and I incorporate intermittent fasting more during the 6 seasons to boost my immune system. And it's with that same process, that autophagy, so that our immune system is rebuilding and staying sharp. Another thing that we're seeing is it increases your insulin sensitivity, and this is very, very important in preventing diabetes in people who are pre-diabetic and people who are diabetes. So our bodies have to be sensitive to the insulin so that we can process those blood sugars appropriately. We're also finding that it decreases cholesterol, which is important for cardiovascular disease. So there's the process. We think intermittent fasting is better than general caloric restriction because of the metabolic changes that it has. We also like it because, something else I wanted to talk about, which was super cool, is we found it's an easier way, instead of reducing calories every single day, people that restrict calories for one day, like such as in the 5-2 diet, when 5 days a week you're eating normal foods and normal diet, and then 2 days a week you have a calorie restricted day or eating 400 to 500 calories on those days, we're seeing that you're actually not eating more on that refeeding day. And we believe it's because your stomach kind of shrinks up, your satiety is better, your hunger cues are quieter, so you're not just making it up and doubling your food intake the next day, which I think is really interesting and cool. So, general recommendations from my standpoint, if you want to try intermittent fasting, what I found in the studies is that you get the best benefit with intermittent fasting with a 36-hour fast. 36 hours. I know I probably just blew some of your minds and terrified you, but it's more doable than what you think. So 36 hours, especially if those are 2 overnight periods, would be like today's Tuesday. So eating dinner tonight, fasting all day tomorrow, and then eating breakfast on Thursday. So that would be a 36-hour period. So it's really just 1 day of fasting, including 2 night times. So the most benefit is at that 36-hour time mark, and that's when the really big metabolism and that cellular rest and autophagy happens between that 24 to 36-hour period. So that is like the cheese, the prime way to do it. Right now, we're doing a lot of studies on, is this time-restricted feeding giving you the same results as the intermittent fasting? And we don't know. We only know from what dietitians are telling us and what healthcare professionals and coaches are telling us as far as verbal feedback, and they're saying yes. They're saying that people are getting benefits from this time-restricted feeding, but I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of scientific studies supporting that one way or the other. So, in my opinion, another thing that's super, super non-negotiable important about time-restricted feeding or intermittent fasting is that you break your fasting period with supreme nutrition, okay? So think about your body's resting, you're going through your metabolic changes, and then it's refeed time, it's refuel time. You're giving your cells everything they need, and they're gonna soak it up like a sponge. So you are not doing your body any service if you throw a cheeseburger in there, if you throw some greasy hash brown breakfast in there. You have got to give your body supreme nutrition when you break that fast, because those cells are like sponges and they're just going to soak it up. For me, I always break a fast with one of my superfood healthy shakes. Non-negotiable. I get my 23 vitamins and minerals. I get my good breakdown of carbs, fats, proteins with that. So I think that is super, super important. Something else that studies are showing us is that you can drink coffee on your fasting periods. Black coffee. Don't add sugar, don't add cream, blah, blah, blah. But you can drink coffee in those mornings. And for a lot of people who have not done intermittent fasting, they've been scared to do this. Studies are saying you can totally do it. Other studies are showing us that decreasing your food intake, even if you're eating 14 to 16 hours a day, eating closer to 10 to 12 hours in your window is better than the 14 to 16. So even restricting it some throughout the day has some benefit. And another just tip or clue I wanted to tell you guys is that your hunger is going to come and go during that fasting period. That's normal and that's okay. It's probably going to be around normal feeding times or if you smell food or things like that. But tell your body you're okay. Life is gonna go on. You're not gonna go crash out anywhere. And to refeed during your schedule. Try to stay on the schedule. My biggest hesitancy or recommendation or fear is people who have diabetes, specifically insulin-dependent diabetes. So if you are diabetic, if you use insulin, I highly recommend discussing this with your doctor before jumping in because your body just doesn't respond to insulin as well and your blood sugars may become a little bit unstable. So do not take this advice without first consulting your doctor. However, with their permission and with their guidance and observation, this may be beneficial to you too with the insulin sensitivity and such going on that we experience. So just to recap really quickly, intermittent fasting, the word's still out, but studies are starting to show us, and definitely our case reports that we're learning from, is that there is benefit to it. One major benefit is that it's an easier way to restrict your calories, that 3,500 calories a week, without having to decrease your calories every single day. It does not have the metabolic effects that daily caloric restriction has. There's other effects that's positive for your body, such as boosting your immune system, allowing your digestive tract to rest, allowing your body to cleanse itself of that detoxification that it really, really needs to happen. And that a 36-hour fast is better than a longer fast and better than a shorter fast, according to the studies that we have now. And my biggest recommendation is to always break that fast with supreme nutrition. Something else that I always do is I drink a cleanse solution when I'm fasting. And I do this to help that detoxification process, help my liver and my kidneys process the detoxification that's going and excreted out of my body as I'm fasting. So I think that's huge too. If you're interested in either the cleanse that I'm talking about or how I break my shakes, I'm more than happy to talk to you about that. And any questions that you have, let's keep the discussion going. There's a lot of information here. I just don't want to take up everybody's mornings for a really long time. But I have so much more content that I'd love to talk to you guys about. So ask me your questions. Let me know what your concerns are. Let me know what you've tried before. I've tried the daily time-restricted feeding. I've fasted 1 to 2 times a day a week. I've done both of those. I've liked and enjoyed both of those for different times in my life. I'd love to tell you about my experiences, but I'd also love to hear about yours too. So let's keep this conversation going. I'm happy to talk all day on here. I can hop on again later this week if more conversations pop up. So the mantra for this week is, what can I do to add to my life today? What can I do to add value or to add to my life today? So a lot of times we don't even think about that, right? A lot of times we go about our day and our schedules control us, or our kids' schedules control us, or our work schedules control us, and we don't have any say in our day at all. And so today I want you to think about, what can I do to add to my life today? Is that drinking lemonade on the porch with my spouse and laughing? Is it reading some personal development? Is it listening to a podcast? Is it feeding your body optimum nutrition? Is it getting those 8 hours of sleep that you haven't for several days now? What can I do to add to my life today? Let me know what your response is to that. I'd really love to support you in that, help you be accountable. Let me know, what are you doing to add to your life today? Thanks so much for tuning in with Coffee with Jentry. I hope you guys have a fabulous Wednesday, and I can't wait to talk to you next week.